Against all expectations, Sweden has decided to mix it up this Eurovision. Instead of sending a returning winner to this year's contest, the Swedish public and the international juries chose Kai, a comedy trio from Finland, and their Sauna Anthem, Bara Bara Bastu. To talk about this unprecedented change of pace for one of Eurovision's most successful and most loathed countries in the contest, I reached out to my friend Groot, who told me all about the phenomenon that's been caused by this underdog musical group. So if somebody told you, let's say like a month ago, that Sweden would be sending a comedy trio to Eurovision with a song in Swedish, and not only that, but they were going to choose that song over a returning winner, how would you have reacted?
Yeah, that would just never be the case because everyone is so in the know of that's just not the way we do things here. And I mean, even if Sweden would gather behind a comedy act and want to send that, the juries would always like step in and make sure that, okay, it's not going to happen. It's going to finish second and everyone's happy, but it's not winning. But here we are.
It was interesting because both Måns and Kai had participated in the same heat, the fourth heat, and Måns was the first to qualify, which was super expected. He ended up getting a perfect score, 12s from all the age groups. And then, of course, Kai was the second to qualify in the second round of voting. But what we saw after that was that their performance did much better on YouTube than Måns did. What was your impression of how people were reacting to that first performance?
I think the main thing that's very interesting about it is the fact that Kai kind of came out of nowhere, because I think most people had the assumption already before the semifinal that yes, Måns will win and everyone will vote for Måns because we love Måns, you know? But then what happened after the show, because then you only heard Bara Bara Bastu, of course, once. But the further along you came and you realized like, okay, everyone's actually getting obsessed with this song because it's a huge phenomenon in Sweden. I can't even express like how big of a thing it is. Then you realize more and more like, okay, people are sharing it, people are talking and spreading the message, and everyone's getting more and more obsessed with it. So this gradual increase in popularity really put the shift on what the favorite was for Melodifestivalen, I suppose.
And how about for yourself? Because obviously you're known as having a lot of musical knowledge. I'd love to get your take on Bara Bara Bastu, what you thought of it when you first heard it, and what you like about it.
It's one of these songs that's very effectively written because it has its hook, it has its selling point with it being very quirky and charming, and just done with a lot of, you know, tongue-in-cheek things about it. You can get quite far with those things, but you still need it to sound great live. Like, you need the production to be strong on it, of course, but you also need the vocalists to perform. Like, it needs to be well sung and convincingly done so. It needs to have the right presentation on stage as well. And I think it's just that the fact that everything about this kind of really checked the mark of doing it to the fullest potential that the song could have. And that's probably the main thing about it, because I think there's a very clear divide between a song like Bara Bara Bastu and a song from Samir och Viktor, let's say, who of course are very popular and very famous for having fun songs, but they're not the strongest singers, so they were immediately kind of disregarded by jurors and such. Meanwhile, Kai definitely, you know, deliver in both areas. It's a lot of fun, it's very creative, it's very out there, but they also perform it very, very convincingly and quite professionally as well.
Well, with all that said, I have to wonder, at what point, or did it at any point, seem at all possible or likely that Kai was going to win? Or was it just right in the moment when it happened?
I mean, not really, to be honest. People were definitely getting the excitement up, like, okay, is it possible? Is it actually possible? But everyone was like, no, it's not possible because we do have the juries. So I think a lot of people were kind of in the having the feeling towards the final that, okay, Kai is probably going to win the televote because it's the viral success. It's huge. It goes on Spotify so heavily. It has the most views on YouTube and whatnot. But I think everyone was just kind of understanding of the concept that, okay, we're not going to send the comedic act because we have the juries as well. The last time Sweden sent a comedic act was in 1986. So that says a lot about this whole concept. We're not used to it.
Those attitudes have also really echoed into the international fan base as well. And, you know, there's a lot to be said about how the international fans are receiving this and how the international fans receive Sweden in general. The tendency for Sweden to lean into mainstream pop, how that has led to a fair amount of negativity around Sweden's participation. With this, we're seeing like so much excitement and any of that resentment that existed before, it seems like it's not there at all in some ways. And so what do you make of going from being like sort of despised to being the darlings of the fandom at the moment?
I can't tell you how strange it is to feel. Like, seriously, it's so unusual for a Swedish person to come to the realization that they want us to win. Like that's never really the feeling that we get. I mean, I think definitely with Loreen we had that feeling, like it was kind of 50-50 early on with Kärja and with Loreen, but you still felt like most people are probably within the Kärja support group, that's a very strange way to phrase it. Most people are
like
probably...
that. I mean, maybe that's the way you could characterize it after the loss.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. No, but many people were, like, I think probably there were more people supporting Kärja than Loreen, but they understood that, okay, it's between these two, and you could pick a side, really. So Loreen was obviously very accepted, I suppose, to be one of these that you could really cheer for when it comes to Sweden. I don't really think we've had that feeling when we've sent a lot of the male pop acts. I think definitely like Cornelia Jacobs in 2022 is probably another good example of like a time when you definitely felt like many people actually wanted Sweden to do well that year. But most of the songs, like if we go back and we take all the way from After Heroes 1 in 2015 and like in 2016, 17, 18, 19, and 21. I mean, the excitement about Sweden wasn't very big in any of those years, I would say. So it feels very strange now in 2024 to just have this appreciation about it. And particularly when it's not a song that people predict will do better in the juries than it will in the televote, because most likely this is more of a televote magnet than a jury favorite. And that's probably the strangest feeling of it all, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, though, it also kind of, it makes sense because the complaint has always been that Sweden is after the jury points, and they're only after the jury points. Like, it's surprising simply for the fact that, like, it's out of character for Sweden to be sending an entry like this at all, I guess. And what I want to know as well is, because you've already talked about how people are excited about the possibility of this winning, and it was expected that this would kind of drop off that conversation, and it did for a moment dip in the odds to second, but then the next day it went right back up to first, and it's still leading the odds to win Eurovision. And so how do you feel about this being treated as a potential winner, and do you actually see it happening?
It's very strange, it really is. Because one thing that we kind of figured, like obviously Måns was going to be a big favorite to win Eurovision if we ended up sending him, and we were all quite certain that we would. But now, since everything got kind of turned on its head, it became definitely more apparent that, okay, maybe we just want to have fun this year, and we're not really in it to win it. And still here we find ourselves at the top of the odds. And I don't really know how to respond to that. Is it a Sweden thing, or is it just because this song is such a huge phenomenon even outside of Sweden? Because I don't think, at least I haven't really come to the realization that people all over love it. It feels like such a local thing to me. But the more you read into it, the more you realize like people from all over the world are actually gravitating towards this. And that's incredibly cool, to be completely honest. And then you also have the side of it that, I mean, Kai did very well in the juries in Melodifestivalen, which was unexpected. Will they do that in Eurovision as well? We don't know, but this could be a sign that they actually will. And then, of course, it's definitely a winning contender, but it doesn't feel like one in my head.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree with a lot of what you're saying, especially because, like, I think the only true novelty winner that we've had would be Lordi in 2006. Funny enough, also Finnish. Before we get into the discussion around Måns Zelmerlöw, I should mention that we recorded this interview earlier in the week. On Tuesday, the news broke that Måns and his wife Ciara have filed for divorce, and along with that, Ciara has made some pretty serious allegations about Måns' character. Now, none of that has anything to do with his Melodifestivalen performance, but because his public image is being re-examined, I felt it was important to say that the comments that we made may not reflect current attitudes. Nonetheless, here's what we said. But I also want to kind of shift the discussion a little bit and talk about Måns, because obviously it was expected that he was going to come in and kind of sweep this and then be the one that we would be talking about possibly winning Eurovision 2025. First and foremost, I want to know, with respect to Revolution, how would you have felt about that song representing Sweden?
I think most of Sweden would be very, very satisfied with sending Revolution. I don't think anyone would really have any complaints. The song, I think a lot of people were maybe not that convinced by it, but he's certainly a professional. They staged it well, he performed it well. I think no one in Sweden would really be disappointed if we ended up sending him. People would be like, okay, we wanted Kai, but Måns is like the second best thing we could do, really. think that's the general opinion. Yeah.
Do you think that in some way part of Kai's success was a reflection of how people were not as warm on Revolution?
That could be it, but I think the main reason really is the phenomenon that Kai is, and that is the reason they won. The hype from Revolution never really disappeared entirely like that. The main thing was always like Kai is absolutely blowing up, and that's the reason they won.
Of course, another thing that has been a development of Mello this year is Måns' reaction to not being the artist that would go on to Eurovision. A lot of people felt that he didn't take the loss very well. Specifically, there were some remarks that he said about how he was surprised that Kai was supported by the jury, even though, yes, like Måns won the jury vote, but Kai was behind just by 2 points, I believe. And he said something along the lines of, we'll see if the jury made the right choice in May. And so what do you make of his reaction and the way that it's being received by other people?
I understand both sides of it personally. I mean, he is a competitor and he was in it to win it for sure. I don't know if you can really just claim that it's a heat of the moment thing, because maybe he still, stands by every single thing he says. But it's mostly just a reflection of the fact that he is so incredibly competitive, and I think he's kind of lived inside this bubble that, okay, he will win. He definitely went into the final with that mindset, and the odds were speaking in his favor. And he obviously has compared it to a football match, and losing a football match, you get upset. And I think that side of things is understandable, but I also see the fact that Melodifestivalen is still, at the end of the day, a very wholesome place where people are, kind of gathering around the same thing and just enjoying the moment. And I think that if a competitor has a little bit of a sour attitude after losing, people will kind of lose that utopia feeling about it. I don't know if that makes sense.
I can see what you're saying as far as there's a lot of attention towards this. It's this thing that, everybody looks forward to, and ultimately it's supposed to be about, fun and music and all of that. And when him and others that we'll talk about as well, they have such a competition mindset, it seems like they live outside of that feeling that everybody else kind of gets from it. Is that sort of what you're getting at?
I think that's kind of fair to say, to be honest. Like, a lot of people, they're just disappointed, but some people have definitely gone after him because of what he has said. And I'm not sure if it's actually that extreme. I think at the end of the day, he's probably pretty happy with Kai winning now upon reflection, and he's obviously made posts or content along with Kai after Kai has beaten him. So I really don't think there's that much in it between the artists, and I'm not sure if Kai are particularly offended by anything that Måns has said, but you'd have to ask them.
So we touched upon the response of other artists as well, and a few that come to mind, Jon Lundvik and Clara Hammarström, some of the things that they have said. Can you summarize what comments they've had about Kai winning?
I mean, it's just been a bit critical. I mean, mainly from Jon Lundvik's side, he's just very much comparing the fact that Melodifestivalen isn't what he thinks it is. I think is really the main content that you can take out of his interview. I think that he's maybe a little bit lost within a typical mind frame of what Melodifestivalen used to be, and has a bit of a hard time accepting that it could be something else at the same time. When you listen to the interview, it doesn't entirely sit right with me when I listen to it. I understand his point of view for sure, because again, he's also very, very competitive. He's won this before, and he has an idea in his head of what Melodifestivalen is to him, and that's what he wants to be a part of. Now, he doesn't really feel like he belongs in what Melodifestivalen ended up being this year, just because of the results. And you could think what you want about that, having that kind of point of view or opinion, but it obviously leaves a little bit of a sour taste as well. When it comes to Clara Hammarström, though, I think the comments were very vague in a way, because she was so excited in this interview where she was kind of grabbed by a reporter and she claimed like she won because she was the best of all of the female competitors and whatnot. But then you got the comment coming out like, it's a man's world, what can I do about it? And then you kind of feel like, what is she trying to say? Because it's very vague and we don't really know what she's referring to. She considers herself a winner. She was very excited about it. But again, it's just a very strange comment to throw out there. Are you implying that we always pick men winning the competition? Because, I mean, we've been criticized of that before, but clearly two of our most successful recent results in Eurovision were from Cornelia Jacobs and Loreen. So it's very, very strange comment that I still haven't really been able to wrap my head around what she's trying to say with it.
Amongst those comments that some of those artists made, they had kind of alluded to this possibility of Mello changing for the future. Do you think that any of those fears of theirs are valid?
maybe we'll find more comedic acts actually taking part in Melfest. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case, because people want to find like the next Kai and whatnot. However, I just think that the surprise factor and the whole concept around what Kai did with Bada Bada Bastu, that it came out of nowhere, it just surprised everyone and it got everyone invested in it. I think that's really what pushed them over the line. I think if we get another humorous act coming in the next year, it could easily just be, you know, kind of a parallel to Kai, like people would compare the two, and I'm not sure if it would be equally as successful. Of course it could happen, but I don't really see us completely deviating from the expected results in Melodifestivalen as well. We would probably still have a lot of polished pop songs competing in the final, and most likely one of them will win next year. But one who lives will find out, I suppose.
Thank you, Groot, for your insights as always. If you enjoy in-depth musical analyses, Groot's channel is a must. Check out the link in the description and subscribe if you haven't done so already. As for me, yeah, you can subscribe to me too, I guess. Why not? Let me know in the comments what you think of Sweden's steamy boys, as I like to call them. Do you think they have a real shot at winning like the odds suggest? I want to know. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.